welcome back to the Wealth Builder Movement. I am so excited to kick off this evening with Black Businesses Matter. We're going to be talking about the Black business ecosystem, support systems for the Black business ecosystem, and we're even going to talk about some of the things that, you know, as Black businesses, we just have had to do to build our own support systems. And so we'll hit all those topics. Now, I'm going to launch right into it by introducing our panel. I am here with Dave Christopher, who is the Executive Director of AMPT. I really like to refer to, I know your formal title, I'm going to refer to you, he is a founder of AMPT, which is a nonprofit that then founded a tech business incubator called the Russell Tech Business Incubator. We're also here with Natalia Bishop, who is serial entrepreneur extraordinaire. She has not only founded marketing firms, founded co-working spaces, but now she is lending her talents, and I'm really saying lending because they got a deal. I don't care what they paid you, it's a deal because they got you to get away from some phenomenal things you were doing to donate your time. That's what I'm gonna call donation of your time to be the Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at University of Louisville. And they're also supporting businesses, Black businesses, through a couple of different efforts, which we'll get into tonight. So I'm gonna start, and then of course, James Bank, who's our virtual guest this evening. You all might not see him just yet, but you will see him later. He is there, trust me. God on high with us tonight. And James is representing Evolve Entrepreneurship. He's a program manager there. And so they're doing phenomenal things nationally to support Black business ecosystems, including some things they're doing here locally in Louisville, Kentucky. So I'm gonna launch right in. Dave, can you tell us about AMPT, Russell Tech Business Incubator? How did it get started? And where was your heart and your passion at when you started it?
So that's the story. So it really honestly started out of frustration. I mean, in the midst of the murder of Breonna Taylor and the COVID-19 and everything that was going on, and when I was looking at, and for whatever reason I was reading some articles about the amount of businesses, 85% of the businesses that applied or wanted to get the PPP loan weren't able to get it. And then when I looked deeper into the numbers, and they said 2.6% of the businesses out of the 22% population of Blacks, only 2.6% were minority owned. Then when you drill down into that, it was 0.8%. And I'm like, that's insane, right? Like less than 1% of Black owned businesses. And then even worse than that, the national average for income for a Black business is $25,000 a year. And not to be funny or like to put it down, but that's lunch money. You can't live off of $25,000 a year. So just really trying to understand, and after my 20 plus years in businesses and opening businesses, and just trying to understand what's missing. And like we know what's missing, right? We know the lack of capital, lack of networking, lack of opportunity, just all the unfair business banking practices. And I thought, you know what? How about I give them everything that they need? And I mean literally every single thing you need to either grow your business or create a business. And somehow between April is when it started and the end of December, which is 2021, I'd raised just over $3 million that people said I could give away. Like all of the funders came in and they said, okay. And because I had this, it started out as like a 7-page plan that I just wrote down, just kind of started trying to figure out what to do. And I sent it out to a couple of friends, the Rockefeller Foundation, had asked somebody if I would be interested in talking to them about funding, and they were the first ones to come, and then the Young Brands and Brown Forman, and they just all started to come in. And the beauty of the plan is that I was clear about this was for Black and Latinx businesses only. And so I wasn't interested in trying to justify that. I didn't care what you thought about it. Like that was what it is. And if you're gonna give me your money, then understand that this is what it is. Like what you see on the paper is not gonna change. So if you're not okay with this, then I don't know what to tell you. And so they have entrepreneur support, which is, we have so if you have personal bills, right? Like we all know, like when you're trying to grow a business, stuff happens, right? LG&E bill, the car breaks down, like whatever it is, we had $200,000 set aside for that. Seed capital, like equipment and accounting and like whatever, and not just like teaching people how to do accounting or getting them QuickBooks, but to actually hire an accountant for them. So like mental health counseling, like all those things. And so I could go on and I don't want to take too much of the time, but like every single thing that you can think of. People ask me, well, what will you do for us? And I'm like everything. We're even backing leases like for people that have credit issues. So if you want to lease a space and people want to lease you a space, and say it's, 200, we just recently did this. We put $200,000 in an account, told the leasee, like, here's 2 years worth of rent. If they don't pay it, it's right here. So give them a fair rate, give them a 5-year lease. We do the same thing with banks. But I'm going to stop. That's so pretty much everything.
You're right. It is literally everything. And oftentimes when people are trying to support the Black and Latinx ecosystem, it's a lot of, I'm a big proponent of education. We're educating people right now through this program.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, it takes more than education to get a business off the ground. And we know that it takes capital investment, it takes resources, it takes community, it takes social capital that needs to be built. And so, Natalia, you are not only representing U of L tonight, but you're also, as myself as well, full candidate, right? Full honesty, right, on this. We are both involved in this program as business coaches, but you are also involved at University of Louisville and what some amazing work they're doing with a health equity innovation hub. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, and I will say, I love you, Dave, and thank you for everything that you're doing. And yes, it's a pleasure to be a part of it because, as you mentioned earlier, over-mentor on the resources, what we see time and time again for Black and brown businesses over and over and over. So to have such a radical, different way of doing business for small businesses that are Black and brown owned is just fantastic. And I hope that we take this everywhere and replicate it out of Louisville. So that's the plan. But outside of that, let me talk to you a little bit about the University of Louisville and what we're doing and what we're hoping to accomplish through the hub. And specifically, I want to talk a little bit about the Change Lab because I think that's one of the most exciting pieces of what U of L is doing right now. And while I'm not the director of the Change Lab, we have a wonderful, amazing, brilliant woman, Ivory Rollins, who's the director of the Change Lab. It is this just amazing initiative that is bringing in applied research into the community and actually tying this into not just providing support for the sake of, hey, here's some education, but actually taking research from the community, solutions, and finding solutions to the problems that the community is bringing forward, not by giving them the solution, but actually helping them devise that solution through their journey, giving them resources in the form of labor, researchers, and leveraging everything that the university already owns to be able to make those things happen and bring right back into the community to increase health equity and really change the outcomes of what our communities are experiencing.
Wow. And we had, some of you that may have joined us on the very first night know that we had the welcome from Ivory Rollins, Change Louisville, Change Lab being our title sponsor, and then to sit here with Natalia, of course, is also involved in that program. It's just a blessing for us as wealth builders. And I think what I'm hearing from both of you, though, is that this might be local efforts that you're doing now, but you both want to extend it to a national effort. And so that's going to take me to our virtual guest, if we have him on the line, James Banks, who works with an organization called Involve Entrepreneurship. And their goal, as I'll let James explain even further, but their goal is to support local entities that are doing the work. And so that they kind of they're this national umbrella with it. And they supported an effort here called Reunion that Allen Houston's foundation had done. And that was a phenomenal effort. So if we have James, on the line and ready, I'd love for you just to introduce yourself, your organization, and tell us about what you all are doing to support Black ecosystems.
Yeah, of course. Can you guys hear me okay?
You?
Everybody can hear me? Okay, great. So I'm a program manager with Involve Entrepreneurship, and we're actually a 501c3 that's working with underrepresented founders to build a community and a platform that basically advances equity and access in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. So combating trends of disproportionate funding, underrepresentation for diverse entrepreneurs, and we basically do this by being committed to partnering with social capital networks, providing connections, training, mentorship, advocacy, whatever they need to pretty much springboard their businesses to the next level. We're really there to just hustle for them, just looking to grow and be ecosystem builders, generally paving the way for Black and women entrepreneurs to succeed.
And one thing that I want to mention, and I'm not going to make you guys full disclose your relationship, the nature of your relationship. But what I love is that at Wealth Builder Movement, we say wealth is a group activity. And here we have two panelists who I actually know separately and came across separately. And I'm talking to James, who's in a whole nother state, who's doing this national effort. And he says, hey, I'm partnering with somebody in Louisville that, would be great for this panel, and I'm like, yeah, he's already on it. So we have, again, we have people working together because so often we can find ourselves in these silos. Mm-hmm. And so, Dave, I wanted you to talk about that concept of de-siloing the efforts so that we have more energy, more power, more funds to help more Black businesses.
I mean, it really comes down to truth. Like, what are you really doing this for? Like, what's the real purpose? What's the goal, right? If the goal is to lift up Black and brown businesses, lift people out of poverty, then why does it just need to be me? I can't. The problem is too big for us to believe that we can do it ourselves. Damon John said one time, somebody asked him, what's the business advice you can give me? And he said, if you ever go into business to make yourself famous, the business will fail. Mm-hmm. If you go in business for the business, then it'll grow. Mm-hmm. And so I think of it like that, like every part, like the connection with Natalia, the connection with you, the connection with James, like all of those are parts that we need because this thing is much bigger than any of us, right? Mm-hmm. And so I don't need you to know who Dave is. I don't that doesn't matter to me. Like that, what I need is for people, for Black and brown folk, I need that number to go from 0.8 to 22%. Like that's what I really need because that's the population, right? And then you talk about taking it outside of this city and state because this problem is not unique to Louisville, Kentucky. And so we are working with the University of Louisville, the Commonwealth Institute of Kentucky to do evaluations on this program to get it right. And we also have a wealth strategist, Dr. Pamela Jolly, in addition to that. So we have a lot of different partners, not just local partners, but like partners all over the country because it's important. It's big.
Wow. And then Natalia, as we talk about, Dave just mentioned the importance of when you have a program, you're putting together these ecosystem support networks, right? That it's important not just to think locally, because there might be some knowledge that's outside of the city. I know Louisville also has a lot of collaborative efforts, but as we think about going outside, there's also this concept of going inside communities as well, and really tapping into the individuals that you're serving that in many cases are disenfranchised, underserved, disenfranchised, disregarded because maybe they don't have, the right look or the right skin tone, right? Or the right socioeconomic status, or they're not the right race, or whatever the reason is presented as, they are disregarded. So what was the onus for Louisville Change Lab really saying, hey, we're not just gonna put something at University of Louisville, we're gonna go into the community?
I think what is really interesting about this effort, especially coming from a university, in a metropolitan university as ours, right, is that someone finally was like, we've been doing this really not right. and it takes a lot of vulnerability to say that, especially at that level, right? And I don't know if someone like verbally said that, but they did. And the way that they approached it was, okay, we don't have the answer. Let's really own the fact that we don't actually have the answer, and let's find people who are living this experience currently, as is Ivory Rawlings, as myself, as Tim McLean, who's our program director, and let's put them in a position where they can then go into the community and help the community become their own solutions versus, hey, let's just go out there and from the top down, we know exactly what entrepreneurship is like. And I think that's a very basic, all three of us are founders here, very basic concept of interviewing your customer and customer discovery over and over and over and iterating over that, but in a mindful, equitable way that takes into account the systems that we are living in and the inequities of those systems, specifically when it comes to Black folks. And I think that that's something that we're hoping to do very mindfully and intentionally, that I think we're doing a little bit different than it has been done in the past.
Wow, that's amazing. And, just that intentionality, that mindfulness, that, discipline, that discipline to set ego aside for the greater good. So I'm going to switch back to Dave. And I know you've been working with these businesses, you've been supporting them. what are some of the biggest challenges you're finding, as you're working, that not challenges you're finding working with the business, challenges you're seeing the businesses are finding and trying to work within a systemically racist setup, and also other issues going on, right, in terms of systemic challenges around financing for a business, systemic challenges around access to contracts and procurement and companies. But what are the biggest challenges that you're finding these businesses are facing as they're trying to grow and develop?
This may be a surprise to people, but it's really the confidence and the hope, the belief that you can do it. Because you've been beat down for so many years, and so you've hit so many walls that it's just hard to believe that something like this is out there and there's this possibility. And somebody actually said that, one of our founders actually said that it was more than just money. It was like, I had hope, because now I know that I can get to that next step, and that I've got somebody there with me, not just for a minute, but for a lifetime. We talk about the AMP family, like we're always here. So that's sort of the biggest thing is that, and I don't even say it's a lack of confidence, because I know that all these businesses believe in themselves, right? But if you keep running into the same wall, at some point you're like, I guess I can't go past that point. And so that's one of the biggest things, because I tell people, I get in trouble for this sometimes, but money is the easy part. It is. It's like they print it every day, right? So but you have to figure out how to use it. And so the other part of that is the education, and understanding, dispelling the myths that you've been told by your cousin and little Mike and whoever about how this works, and understanding that you have to make good decisions. You have to know the foundational stuff. I tell people we were so successful in 2020 during a pandemic because we already had a plan. Like I knew, like in 2019, I had made a decision to try to go from we got stuck at $700,000 annually, right? And I'm like, okay, I need 3 to 5 years. I want to be at 2.3 million. I don't know why I chose that number. It was this number. And so I had a plan. So when 2020 hit, I wasn't planning for 2020. I was planning for the 3 to 5 years. But what happened was, because we had a plan, it was almost like this cartoon where you see the car speeding down the road. It's a busy highway, and then cars just kind of peel off because people didn't have plans. And so that's the thing we're trying to really get them to understand, is that you have to have that marketing strategy and pricing strategy and digital, like all those, to understand accounting, not being an accountant, but understand your accounting. So the education and the hope, or the lack of hope, and belief that we can actually, that we're going to get this done.
When we were, and I'll piggyback really quickly off of that, when we were as a hub trying to figure out our missions and values and vision, one of the themes that kept coming back was exactly what you're talking about. Like, we as Brown founders don't lack confidence. We know we got it. Yeah. But at a certain point, it becomes sort of like this record in your mind. And I think sometimes, and my experience of mentoring other founders that are maybe in earlier stages than I have been, is that you need someone to believe with you, and can give you money and resource you in all the different ways. So I love that you said it that way. So it's believing with someone, believing enough to put that $200,000 in an account and say, hey, I'll vouch for them, right? So, yes.
Wow, that's amazing. And one thing I'm going to latch on that, I love how you said, like, someone to believe with you. So it's not, I have hope in me. I just don't have hope that you got hope in me. But Dave, I'm going to end this panel with James, who actually, I did not mention it, but as you all noticed, I know something about James' background. He's faced away from the wonderful ocean, but he has been so gracious to donate part of his vacation time, to provide educational resources to let people know about what the organization he's doing is all about. And one of the things also that I wanted to ask James about really piggybacks off of what you said, Dave, in terms of having a plan for the businesses and maybe some more of the operational things. And James, I know that you have a really strong background in operations of businesses. And so can you give, just as maybe a last takeaway, what are some operational things that entrepreneurs could be thinking about kind of at day one? The product, sometimes we get so fixated on that we don't think about the whole business and the operations around it. So what are some things, maybe just one piece of advice you could give on the operational side of running a business?
Yeah, of course. And since you threw me under the bus, I'll go ahead and share where I'm joining from. I'm actually in St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands, so surrounded by beautiful Black people. And, as you all know, this work never ends. So I was happy to join on during my vacation. But operational concerns, I think the biggest thing I see, and I'll keep this short, so I'll give you guys one thing. The biggest thing that I see with the entrepreneurs that I work with, and Dave can also attest to this, is like, not always a good support system is a good team, right? My concern is that Black business owners, of course, have a hard time building a solid team. As we all know, it takes a village, but I think it's the mentality of, Black and brown business owners that, we have that DIY, that do it yourself attitude, because that's how we have to do everything else. Right. But it's tough, to run a business and properly market and, market your products or your services, especially right now, it's crucial to put just as much effort into your marketing and branding of your business as it is anything else. With websites, with product development and social media being so important in a digitized business world, you can't be afraid to ask for help. You got to get out there, you got to develop, a marketing team, that understands your vision. And even if that means someone's just helping out with social media, that's super important because it goes a long way. And to kind of piggyback off of what Dave was saying also is like, talk about dispelling myths. We don't have a problem with the idea of business, in our communities as much as, these funders think we do, right? It comes down to, it's not about color, it's about culture. Anyone can sell a product to a community of people, but there's so much pressure on being a Black and brown business owner in Black and brown communities. And we carry that on our shoulders every day, so it's actually, but if you're selling a product or a service in our community, there's always a piece of your business that is preserving our culture, and it's better you than a large corporation profiting off of that culture. So, which is why, there's so much power in saying buy Black. And I think we have to just be mindful of that, when we step into, wanting to create a business, and also be super mindful of that as consumers.
Jane, you just literally dropped a bomb there in terms of that, it's not color, it's culture. And that's truly something that, we believe in here at Wealth Builder Movement. We're not about pitting races against each other. Okay, but we are about supporting Black people. What did Issa Rae say? I'll vote for everybody Black. That's not because she has anything against everybody white. We don't have anything against that. But really, it is about supporting those that are underserved significantly. And I also believe that when you provide support and resources for those that might be watching that don't understand the concept or are a little confused of why would you focus on one group or the other group, why Black and Latinx? When you provide an ecosystem for Black and Latinx entrepreneurs, everybody is going to rise off of that ecosystem. When you tackle the most challenging area, not because the entrepreneurs are challenging, but because their systemic issues are so challenging that they're under, that everybody is going to rise off of that. Like it's going to reach everybody. So
can I say something really quick?
Yep.
Just two things. One is something he said, that James said. I always tell people this: stop asking for what you think people will give you and ask for what you need. Because what happens is when you just get what people will give you and it fails, they say you didn't know what you were doing, but you never had what you needed, right, to get that whole thing done, right? And I always say this: we are not broken. I don't need you to fix me. And so we gotta stand in that space and give each other the opportunity to fail, right? We had a situation just recently where a Black business, according to someone else, wasn't meeting the standard. And I jumped right into that email thread and was like, we're not doing that. Like, that's not how we do it. Because you have to understand that person doesn't necessarily have the capacity to do what you believe they need to do. And until you're willing to give them that capacity or help them with that, then you can keep that to yourself.
Yeah, so we can keep it to yourself. Well, I know that. Okay, well, please continue to stay tuned for the rest of the evening. We'll be right back with our next segment, which is going to be talking about how do you actually launch a business.
We are proud to bring together university resources, Tier 1 level research, and residents as expert collaborators from West Louisville neighborhoods. Why West Louisville? The greatest of all time comes from West Louisville.
Cassius Clay from Louisville, Kentucky.
I am the greatest.
Knowledge, resources, and love abound. It's access that we all need. Louisville Change Lab is your connector.
Hello, My name is Ivory Rollins Cross, and it is my pleasure to serve as the director of the Louisville Change Lab.
Welcome back to the Wealth Builder Movement. I am so excited for this next segment that we are going to be doing. We are going to be talking about how do you launch a business. I know we just talking about the Black business ecosystem. We really went over the support systems that are needed for Black businesses. So maybe you're an entrepreneur or you're entrepreneurially minded and you're wondering, where do I get started? How do I take advantages of the resources in my area? So today I am here with Dana Cosby and Tawana Bain. I'm so excited to be here with them. Dana, I'm going to start with you today. And normally the first thing that people want to know is like, how do I get legitimate, like legalized? And for our audience, Dana, of course, is a lawyer. She got her law degree from Duke, but as entrepreneurs, particularly Black entrepreneurs, you're very fortunate. Dana has a business, which, can I mention Business Sidekick? Business Side Chick. And Business Side Chick is really legal services as well as I kind of get almost like chief operating services, operating officer services for entrepreneurs and startups, small businesses that maybe you can't afford your own in-house counsel, general counsel, but you can access Dana. So Dana, my first question is, we have a lot of businesses that start out as side hustles. And when we're doing it on the side, or maybe it's a hobby, we're making some cash, maybe we can do something at the farmer's market or a vendor fair. But what's the difference between having a side hustle, a hobby, and an actual legal entity, a legitimate business? Is there a difference?
Well, they're all related. So I think most successful entrepreneurs do all of those things. So the most thing about being legitimate is just like as a person, you got to have papers. Okay, so just like we have our social security number, you have to be able to figure out what is the business, who owns the business. So a lot of times when people have to legitimize it, they are looking to paper it. Okay, to make it legitimate, just like you need to have your photo ID, you need to have your social security card or your passport. So a hustle is a way to make money. So there are some really amazing people out here who figure out they see all these opportunities to make money and they get the money. The hustle is they get the bag, they secure the bag, they get the money. That's hustle. A business requires you to build a system so you can have a recurring. You figured out, okay, where are my resources going to come from? Who's going to do it? And how do I keep it going? So a business always has an idea of how to keep making the money and how to get the resources that you need. Then you have to actually form a company because the company is going to hold that business and own it. It's the way you're able to establish ownership. It's the way you're able to bring other people in who can also establish ownership. So the company is what holds the business. And that's where you need paperwork when you have a business so everybody knows who to write the check to, what's the business name. And then you also
Wonderful. So in that, and I'm going to stick with Dana because I have another follow-on question to that, Dana. My follow-on question is, everybody's confused. I know I was super confused. LLC versus S Corp, or is an S Corp and a corporation the same thing? Do I get tax savings if I do an LLC? When I actually go to file the paperwork, how do I choose? What are the thought processes?
And you actually have you named a few of them. I think in Kentucky there might be 11 ways in which you could structure and the company, okay? So once you decide, okay, now I need to form the company. I got the business, I know how I'm gonna make my money. Now I need to put that business inside a company. The most important thing an attorney will tell you is pick the entities that limit your liability. Okay, so if you don't put it in a company, that means it's you're the business. So when they want to sue the business, when the business, somebody slips and falls or has some kind of life issue or injury, you want it to be the company that gets sued. You want everything to be in the company name. And so there's only a few entities for most companies. It's going to be an LLC or a corporation that will give you that kind of protection. You've actually created another legal person, and that's who they get to sue. Now when it comes to, so then the tax issues, see that's the thing, I just told you the legal ones that most people use, which is LLC or corporation. S Corp is a tax status. It's how do you want to be taxed? How many tax returns are you going to be filing? Okay, so if you choose a pass-through entity like an S Corp, the company is just informational. This is how much money the company made, but the actual taxes get paid on your individual tax return. So it gets taxed once. If you don't do that, you do a C Corp, corporation, then the corporation files a tax return, it pays taxes, and then if you ever get any money, because you're going to want to get money from your company outside of wages, then you're going to have to include that in your tax return and pay taxes again. So you got to make the legal decision, which is limit your liability, and then you got to figure out what's my tax strategy.
Wow. Okay. There you guys go, from free legal counseling and unofficial. I've learned enough from Dana to know that you cannot do that. Consult with your attorney, and also, a little bit of tax wisdom. We won't call it tax advice, but tax wisdom. So I'm also here with Tawana Bain, and Tawana, you had several companies, and one thing I want to point out to our audience is that Tawana, I consider her the black female Elon Musk. And to the extent that when we see Elon Musk, we never think, he has an electronic car company, he has a space company, he came from the financial tech industry, now he's doing a company that's putting neural implants in the brain. So we never second guess, can you have multiple companies as an entrepreneur when it's Elon Musk? And here we have a phenomenal black female entrepreneur with several companies. So Tawana, can you walk us through briefly just your journey? What was your first company? And then how did you get to where you're at now? I know you have several active companies. Today's Woman is one of those companies. I'm gonna have a follow-on question for you about a special prize that we have from Today's Women. But could you just start with your journey and where did you start and how did you, come up with the ideas and choose which one to actually form a company out of?
Sure. Well, what's interesting, Dana, I think that's the best that I've ever heard that explained from a legal perspective and a liability perspective. So I just really learned something sitting here today. My first company was NAC, which is still around, but it has evolved quite a bit. And I actually started that company up as an S Corp. Now all of my entities I set up as LLCs. I think I have an understanding of why I did that, but I have a much better understanding today. I started my first business really out of a necessity. I was in a career where I had started a business for another entrepreneur. And once we had grown to a certain degree, she was ready to change directions and bring in different leadership. And at that point, I made the decision that I wanted to strike out and go out on my own. And we started as just a telemarketing firm. And as we got into that, I found myself adding on services for our clients. And before I knew it, we were doing everything, like some of everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I just remember sitting back one day after going to a couple business seminars, hearing about, organizing and focusing your messaging, and decided to really sit down and categorize all the different things that we were doing. And I recognized that what we were really strong at is project managing multiple marketing lanes. And so if a company wanted to work with a single point of contact as it related to marketing, they gave us a call. Now I will say, that was the first, that we started. And there were some serious turn of events that transpired later as I was an entrepreneur that really forced me to rethink putting all my eggs in one basket.
Wow. So you also, I won't go into all the businesses that you have, but I will mention that you just rebranded a restaurant that you have called the Black Jockey Lounge now. Can you talk to us about I know a lot of us, that are Black entrepreneurs end up in the food industry. We end up in the restaurant business, and we're trying to navigate that. We're finding out that the profit margins in the restaurant business, you have to be very tight to get those profit margins. So Tawana, not having come from the restaurant industry, how did you as an entrepreneur manage having that idea, having that vision, and then learning along the way to build a successful restaurant?
Sure. Well, I think with anything, when you have a business, you need to understand what you're really good at and what you're not. And I think oftentimes we try to be truly the jack of all trade. And the reality is I like to consider myself an amazing marketing strategist, a great project manager, but I am not a restaurant operator. And so I recognize that out of the gate, but I had a vision for bringing a space into downtown Louisville that is open to everyone, don't get me wrong, but we're in Louisville, and how many atmospheres could you go in as a professional or an affluent Black professional? And it was upscale, it had good food, it had a nice vibe. And so I wanted to create that for our city. But I also recognized my limitations. So I went out and found individuals that were good in the restaurant industry, that knew how to cook, that understood how to run a bar, everything that I could not do. Because what I explained to them was, I have this vision and I want to enjoy it too. So I do not plan on operating it. As a matter of fact, I don't even know how. So.
Wow. And that's a really good segue back to you, Dana. I want to ask you about how do we avoid situationships? So what Tawana's saying is, don't go it alone. Get some business partners in with you, hire the right employees. But oftentimes we can find ourselves in these situationships where we had a friend or we found somebody and there was no legal agreement. I know you've seen a lot of things, I'm sure all of which you can't talk in detail about. But could you give our entrepreneurs some advice on how to avoid getting into complicated legal situations with at one time great friends who became business partners?
The most important thing is, if you want to be a good business partner, you have to be a good business partner. It's the same way it works in all relationships. So the most important thing in all relationships is that you have to be assertive. So a lot of times you can imagine when the person's passive, okay, they never speak up, they never say what they want. Those always turn into bad business relationships. They let somebody dominate, or somebody dominates. They never listen to the other partner. They don't take advantage of two heads are better than one. They don't listen, so they're aggressive. And then you need the assertive person who, this is why I'm here, this is what I'm trying to get out of this relationship, this is how I want to make my money, this is what I bring to the table, and if you want that from the other person. So everybody needs to practice their assertiveness. And then you want to document it. So a lot of times I refer to it, having a business is a legal thing, just like getting married. It's property oriented. So just like you hear everybody talking about prenups, that's exactly what you want to do. You want to make the agreement while you're getting along, while you love each other, and everybody be honest and what they want to get out of it and what they're afraid of, address all your fears. So that way, when things don't go so well, you have a roadmap. You've already decided how those things are going to go. And so your business relationship, your business partner is like all the other partners in your life. You're going to have to be the good partner so you can get the good partner.
Wow. I know that when I coach a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't have that legal contract in place. They don't have any agreement. They don't have the business prenup in place. If somebody right now is listening and they haven't really done that, but now they kind of want to in reverse do it, and let's say, I'm just going to muddy the water a little bit, they're in maybe not the best stage of the marriage relationship. Is there any advice, just words of wisdom in your experience? How do you, what should you be thinking about when you're trying to come together and form an agreement in the midst of maybe a disagreement? You're both on the same page, something needs to be done, but how do you navigate that?
And it's because you're always in negotiation. So you got to know what you want. And you got to know, everybody, when you get in, whether it's a dispute or when you're doing the prenup, you got to know what you want. And you got to get that, your goal, and you got to be honest. I know a lot of times people think it's proprietary and it's secret, but transparency is amazing in business. You actually get to trust quicker with transparency. So a lot of times, even in disputes, you have to understand, everybody needs to bring what they want, and let's find, it's not always going to be a win-win, but maybe if we can get most of what we want. You get what you want, I get what I want, and you should always be doing that when you're dealing with your business partner. you know, you got to be a good partner. Are they getting what they want? Because if they're not going to stay very long. People are going to do it for so long, and you're not going to stay very long. If everybody's always focused, it sounds very selfish, but as long as you're focused on what you want and you're aware of and cognizant of what they want, then even in a negotiation and dispute, we're gonna fold up this company, we're gonna walk away. What do you want? What do I want? That's always the discussion. And so I would say start getting good at writing down what you want, let them write down what they want, and then when you guys get there, hire the attorney so they can paper it.
Wow, awesome. So Tawana, we often think about financial capital when we're starting a business, but we rarely think about social capital. You are very well connected in the city of Louisville, where your businesses are based. How would you advise entrepreneurs to build social capital? Let's say they're just going from the corporate world to the entrepreneurial world, and now they're trying to move into a whole new ecosystem and form partnerships with people in a whole new vein. Any advice you could give to people on how to build that social capital?
Wow, that's a really, really great question. The first thing I think, Angelique, is showing up. You know, so often we have our head down and we're trying to build, and there's this opportunity to network or this opportunity to attend a workshop or seminar, and we just don't make time because we're so busy trying to do the work, working in the business. And in order to really be successful, you have to work on it too. So I definitely recommend make sure that you're showing up, you know, and making time to make those connections. To a point that Dana just made is you've got to be willing to trust people. So often, you know, you meet someone and they may offer you an opportunity and your fears paralyze you. And so you never go after those opportunities. You never form collaborations. You never take risk. And then the third I would say is don't burn bridges. You know, things happen. I understand you're going to have disagreements, but do your best. You know, don't be anybody's fool for sure. But do your best not to burn a bridge. You know, that whole concept is taking 10 seconds to think. You know, if you feel that you are frustrated or you are upset with someone, think it through. You know, talk to a couple advisors, because maybe, just maybe, your perception is not really what they meant by either a gesture or a comment. And I think that if you show up, learn to trust people and be willing to collaborate and take risks, and really, really work hard not to burn bridges, you'll watch your social capital build and build quickly.
Wow. Very briefly, and I know you could say a lot, Tawana, about this, but have you found being an African-American female in entrepreneurship, which can sometimes be white male dominated depending on the sector, have you found ways to navigate that? I mean, we have so many injustices that are against us. We're not really given the credit for things that we should be, but at the same time, you have to build these relationships. So how have you navigated that, you know, through those challenges?
Good questions this morning. In all transparency, for a long time, I didn't do it well. It was very hard. And, you know, I also want to say that in this world, and because of a lot of the trauma that's happened in the Black community, it's not always the white community that can be the problem. Right? So there's a lot of things that I had to learn, that sometimes the reason why people did not trust, or sometimes the reason why people may not have necessarily believed you, is because of experiences that they've had or trauma that they've experienced that has really been passed down generation to generation. 2020 was a pivotal moment. It was a pivotal year for me. It is when I decided to rip off the Band-Aid, when all the things that you subliminally know, that you kind of hold in the back of your mind when you walk into any room, regardless of who's at the table. And Tawana 2.0 showed up. And it was really crazy for me, because there are so many things that I realized that I was sitting quiet about, that I was not speaking up about, opportunities that I was not taking out of fear. And I decided no more. So I just want to say, I'm certain that there are other people out there that are just like me, that, you know, you may be successful or people may give you all these accolades, but the truth of the matter is you're drowning and you're still afraid to find your voice. And I just decided that I was tired of being quiet.
Wow. So I want to take an opportunity now with Tawana to have you introduce an exciting giveaway. You are also the owner of Today's Women, and the Wealth Builder Movement is excited that Today's Women has actually generously donated a $10,000 package to the Derby Diversity Business Summit, which I'll let her explain. But not only do you get to go to this wonderful diverse summit, really we have diverse suppliers there, diversity supplier arms of corporations there. You're networking with other entrepreneurs, business owners, people that you can potentially get contracts from, large corporations, Humana's, I think you guys have had organizations for, General Electric. So having all those organizations there. But in addition to that, you get to enjoy Derby and Oaks. And I do believe get a 5-night stay in a hotel. So this is a wonderful package, but there is a way that you can get a hold of it by filling out a survey, get a chance at it. So Tawana, do you want to talk about that package and that wonderful giveaway that you all are donating?
Absolutely. So it's super exciting. I don't know if you've never attended the Derby or if you've never had a Kentucky Derby Suite experience. Here's definitely an opportunity for you to do so. There is a catch. We do want you to take about 5 minutes to fill out a survey. If you head over to blackconcerns.com and take a survey called Equity Vested. And the whole premise of this survey is so often in corporate America, they want to assess whether or not they're doing the right things that relates to diversity or equity and inclusion. And we want to do a spin on that. We want their assessment to be through the Black lived experience, through the Black lens. Because one thing we know for certain as Black people, we can walk into any room and we know within 30 seconds, based on someone's body language or how they speak to us, whether or not they have racist tendencies. And that is just not something that a white survey can deliver for you. And so we're asking for you to fill it out, let us know how you think about certain things, so that when we roll this assessment out in corporate America to decide where they really stand with racial equity, it is through the Black lived experience and the Black lens. So we hope that you'll participate. As Angelique said, we have an amazing time Derby week. We have what I like to say, work hard during the day, play hard at night. So you've got summit during the day, festival in the evening, and all of that you land at the track at Churchill Downs for the Kentucky Derby Suite experience with us.
Wow, wonderful. So it's an opportunity for everybody to not only have their voice be heard, not only do good in terms of helping others, but also get a wonderful $10,000 package, to a conference and Derby experience here in Louisville, Kentucky. So we are dropping the survey link right now in the chat. Please do fill it out. And thank you, ladies, both. This has been a wonderful panel session. Dana, I want to ask I'm going to squeeze in one last little question to you. Based off of all of the experience that you've had with entrepreneurs at all different business sectors, what's one piece of advice, kind of final closing advice you would give to an entrepreneur who's just starting out, who says, I want to launch a business, and what's that one piece of advice you would say that could kind of help them along the way?
I think I'm just now this is one of the things, if you know somebody who's doing something well, don't be afraid of copying it, just give them credit. So I'm gonna take a chapter out of that book for Tawana. Don't be nobody's fool, and you gotta trust people.
All right, love it, love it, love it. Okay, well, thank you, ladies, for being here with me today. We will be right back with our last segment. Please stay tuned. We'll be back with the Wealth Builder Movement. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Timothy Findley Jr. The Louisville Change Lab has taken the incubation model and enhanced it through innovation and outreach to the West Louisville community. We at Life Development Corporation are thankful to be a part of this transcendent initiative with the University of Louisville Change Lab.
We are proud to bring together university resources, Tier 1 level research, and residents as expert collaborators from West Louisville neighborhoods. Why West Louisville? The greatest of all time comes from West Louisville.
Cassius Clay from Louisville, Kentucky.
I am the greatest.
Knowledge, resources, and love abound. It's access that we all need. Louisville Change Lab is your connector.
Hello, my name is Ivory Rollins Cross, and it is my pleasure to serve as the director of the Louisville Change Lab.
The Wealth Builder Movement isn't about money. It's about peace of mind, hope for the future, and fulfilling your God-given purpose. You are a wealth builder. You're looking to launch a new business, invest in your community, make systemic change, and actionable plans. You are a wealth builder, but you can't do it alone. Join Wealth Builder Movement, an online collective advancing Black and brown wealth together. By joining our Facebook group and YouTube channel, you will learn from, invest with, and leverage others. Wealth is a group activity. Work, create, and build with others. Join the movement, the Wealth Builder Movement.
Welcome back to the Wealth Builder Movement. In this final segment, we're talking about how do you take a concept all the way to making it into a corporation. And the last segment, we were talking about how do you actually practically launch a business. But we know that really a business idea kind of just starts as a concept in your head, and you have to cycle through a lot of different ideas before you decide this is the one I'm going to launch. And then even after you launch it, there's a whole lot of steps that go with that. So I am here with Carolyn Pitts. She has founded a company called Productions.com. She is joining us virtually this evening, and I am so excited to talk with her. Carolyn, can you hear me clearly? Are you on the line?
I am, and I can hear you. Hi, Angelique. How are you this evening?
Wonderful. Yeah, I can hear you and I can see you, and I'm excited to have you with us today. I'm going to launch right into questioning. Carolyn, I would just love it if you could talk about your journey and your entrepreneurial journey. You, of course, are also a lawyer. And so I don't know if it started on the legal side and worked its way into the company side or how that went. But, I would love to hear your story, and I know our viewers would also.
Sure. Happy to share. My background, I'm an intellectual property and entertainment attorney, and I also have experience in management consulting, strategy work, and business development. And it turns out that all of those work very well if you're going to found a business in terms of just a framework to be able to think through some of the issues and be able to take an idea all the way from concept to corporation.
Oh, wow. And so with that, I am going to launch right into my first question, which is, okay, you formed this company called Productions.com, and I would love to hear more about it. And in particular, I'd like to hear what was your vetting process as you were thinking about whether or not to form this company versus, kind of just staying, and which wouldn't have been a bad thing, but staying where you're at and moving primarily practicing law and IP?
Yes, that's a great question that I get asked very often. I have always been involved in entertainment in some way or another, whether it was as a practicing attorney or as someone in undergrad taking courses in film, and in law school taking courses in film, writing some content myself. So I've always sort of kept my finger on the pulse of TV and film. I live in Atlanta, which, believe it or not, is the busiest production hub in the world. We have more production activity here in Atlanta than anywhere else in the world and in the country. And so I'm very familiar with our rise in activity. So over the last 10 or 11 years, Atlanta and the state of Georgia have significantly increased the amount of production activity, due largely to our tax credit that we have here, as well as our incredible experienced talent that's here and our backdrop and our wonderful weather. And so in watching all of that, I was really surprised to find out that in spite of the wealth of production activity, that local crew members really struggle to find work. It seemed really counterintuitive. It's like, starving in the middle of a banquet, or, being incredibly thirsty in the middle of a pool of fresh water. And so I did what I like to call research, but everyone else calls it customer discovery in the world of entrepreneurship, really just to find out, is this just what I'm reading? Is it just something that my clients are experiencing, that my friends in the industry are experiencing, or is this really a problem? And so I spent a good amount of time going to industry meetings here in Georgia. I also checked in with folks I know in different parts of the country. And I found out that, in fact, it is a challenge to find work within a production hub. When production is occurring remotely from where the content was greenlit, like here in Georgia, up to 70% of the crew members are actually flown in. And this creates significant hardship for the incredibly talented folks who live and work in that production hub. And I found out that in LA and New York, which are vibrant and have, a ton of very experienced people, both below the line and above the line, so junior and senior folks, there's still challenges because there are inefficiencies in how to find and source the talent, how to pay the talent. And really, technology wasn't being leveraged in a way that would make that easier, that would create cost savings, and also that would really drive equity and parity. The industry has had issues with diversity for many, many years. And so our platform is a technology, productions.com, that really makes it easier for our stakeholders, who are studios, music labels, and corporate brands, to identify, find, and hire production talent across the US and Canada, and we'll be expanding overseas soon. And while we advocate for production professionals of all backgrounds, we're also incredibly intentional about making sure that women and professionals of color have access to opportunities as well. And we do that through our DE&I division, Include.
Wow. Wow. I mean, I keep saying wow because I think, something that our audience might be picking up on, I know I'm picking up on it, is that you came from one sector, the legal sector, and then you stepped into another sector, the tech sector. And so my question for you is, how was that transition? Most companies now have to be tech enabled. Whether you're selling a cookie company or not, a lot of cookie companies are now doing sales online. So if nothing else, they're using a website, but you're doing a whole tech-enabled, a tech marketplace. So is there any advice you can give to listeners or viewers that are tuning in that are saying, hey, I have an idea. It requires a technology solution. I am not a techie. I am in a whole nother career line right now. My skill set I don't have a PhD in engineering or computer science degree. What advice would you give them as they're trying to figure out, how can I build this tech platform so that I can get my concept out there? And how can I do it in a way that doesn't put the burden on me to have to be the tech expert?
Yes. It's a great question. I would say the first thing you have to have is faith in yourself, because I am a non-technical founder. So I decided to build a tech company, even though I don't have an engineering degree and haven't taken computer science courses. And so the first thing I did was really write down the idea, really scope out the framework of what I was thinking about. Then, as I mentioned, I did some customer discovery to find out, is this really a problem? Is it a problem that people want to solve? And will people pay me to help them solve this problem? And over time, once I was able to determine that all of those were yes check marks, I decided, what I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure that I educate myself on the things that I don't know. Although I do have a very diverse background, there certainly are things that I need to add to my toolkit. And so I actually joined an incubator called Digital Undivided. After that, I've done a number of accelerators as well. And we'll probably talk about that a little later in our conversation. But what I did was join this incubator so that I could make sure that I was understanding what I don't know. Because sometimes what you don't know is you don't know what you don't know. And that's the real challenge. And the fear in getting started is in thinking it's harder than it is. This was the idea that I had. And unlike some other founders, this wasn't, maybe number 3 or number 4. This was what I knew I wanted to solve. My passion, my interests, and my skill set, even my location told me that the time was right for me to really explore whether and how to solve this problem. And in terms of the technology, in addition to learning about agile methodologies and, tech in general and wireframing, I actually built my own MVP, which is a minimum viable product on WordPress. And I took it out there to market. And because I have a background in business development, I was doing sales to both sides of our marketplace with a WordPress site to really validate that indeed folks would want this type of solution and that they'd pay us for it. And beyond that, I've now built a team, and we have a CTO who has custom built the application that's out in market now. But in order to make sure that this was something to invest my time and my money and my energy in, what I did was build it myself. I know that not everybody would have that solution. There are other solutions to finding inexpensive ways to test your product, or even just building a landing page, gathering email addresses, and other responses from people to really give you some inputs to know if indeed you should invest more time and money.
I love that piece of advice that you kind of gave at the end, which, is really wrapped into your story, that you built it yourself. I am always talking to entrepreneurs and saying, hey, Wix, WordPress, there are so many websites that you can get access, that you can build yourself, and it is no harder than what you do uploading pictures or videos of Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. It's all template based. And the beautiful thing that I'm hearing you say about building it yourself is it's an aid for customer discovery. So you could literally, build a website, maybe even have pictures of a product line you might be thinking of, and even have a buy button on it. And how when people click buy button, it just says, out of stock or, coming out soon, right? So that you could get real data. So I think that piece of advice you gave about building the platform to get the data that says, hey, this is a viable company. So then you can get the money to have a custom built out, fully developed platform. Well, I'm going to switch gears a little bit now. And I want to spend the rest of our segment, we don't have that much time, but I want to spend the rest of it talking about intellectual property, because it's not often I get to talk to an intellectual property lawyer. and also one who is coming from the creative space. And we have a lot of creatives that are entrepreneurs that are watching, and, they might be missing out on opportunities to think, do I have intellectual property? It's not just the engineers, the tech companies that have some IP. Can you explain about some forms of IP that creatives might have?
Sure. Yeah, the top two, I would say, although I may go into a third. Certainly copyright. And copyright is something that you originally have authored. So think a song, a book, a script, something that you created literally out of thin air that you want to be able to protect and make sure that no one can take it away and try to claim it as theirs or make money off of your idea. So you want to be clear that you have something original. And also that you have the right to own it. Trademark is another thing that you probably heard folks talking a lot about, and making sure that the way in which you're holding your business out is protected. So for instance, our company name is productions.com. We also have a logo. We have reached out to the USPTO, which is the U.S. Patent and Trade Office, to both search to see if there was anything similar or that would prohibit us from protecting it, and then to seek protection for the domain name that we're using as our mark, as well as our logo, which you can see if you go to our website. But making sure that those things are protected, that no one can get in front of you and be able to claim it or use it against your interest. Because again, if somebody gets your IP and uses it, particularly if it's an entity or a person with more money, then they can essentially take what you've created and become rich off of it, and perhaps even box you out of the market. I'll mention trade secrets as well. Probably one of the best ways to think about that is maybe the flavor for Coca-Cola, the thing that makes it the most valuable. What is it that you know that you can use to make your business successful that will be a competitive advantage that no one else knows? That's something you need to protect. If it's a recipe, like the Coca-Cola product recipe, if it's a piece of information, if it's an algorithm that you've created, there are ways that you can protect any and all things that you create in the creative space. And I know from having worked with a lot of artists that very often the focus is on creating the art, which is wonderful. We have to also be concerned about protecting it. Otherwise, all the time and energy we've spent creating it could unfortunately be undone.
We had another panel earlier this evening where Dana Cosby, who's also an attorney, she's an attorney for a marketing firm, and they do a lot of business with entertainers. And one of the things that I know she has mentioned before is that people don't even think about the concept that their name, their brand has value. When you have estate sales for famous entertainers that pass away, it's the name. You can't put that name or my image, that particular picture of me can't go on a T-shirt, without giving us, our royalty payments or getting a license for that. I want to, still say a little bit on this entertainment side, and just, we only have about 2 minutes left, but I really wanted to get this question out because I know there's, again, a lot of entrepreneurs who are coming from the creative space, coming from the entertainment space that are trying to balance exposure versus protecting their IP. So I could put everything out on YouTube, or do all my stuff on TikTok and, kind of put it out there in the public sphere. But, is that protected when you do that? And should people be thinking about that trade-off between exposure and IP as they look at some of these social media platforms?
You're right that it's a very delicate balance and that one should always think very carefully before posting. You should also make sure that you're protecting to the best of your ability. So you should have a non-disclosure agreement that you can use whenever you're revealing something that's not on social media, just to an individual so that they can't take your idea. And if they do, you have a way to enforce penalties for having done that. And when you're posting on social, you have to remember it's normally visible to the whole world or most of it. And very often you can't take it back. So you want to also be very careful about the tone of what you're posting and whether or not you're really giving away any of that secret sauce. But to your point, oftentimes that's what you need to be able to get to that next level. So I would say for folks to definitely get in touch with legal aid. There's always going to be legal aid organizations in every city and state where you can get free or very inexpensive advice. And if you can afford it, it's worth it to talk to a private attorney if you have very specific questions or aren't able to get to legal aid to be able to get your questions answered before you post and before you have that meeting where you reveal all that you've been working on that really sets you apart from other artists.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. And so the main takeaway I'm going to take from that statement is, listen, but I know we were told, spend all your money on lawyers when you start a company, but there are some legal aid agencies. There are a lot of universities now that have law clinics that are providing that for free to entrepreneurs in the community. And so, certainly don't lose your IP because you haven't looked for resources that could be free or very affordable to even have a strategy as you're going from concept to corporation. Well, we're out of time, but Caroline, I just want to thank you so much for joining us, for telling us about productions.com, for sharing your journey. We hope to have you back for a much longer segment. And we're so happy that you have been able to be with us this evening. We wish you all the best. And you all, please continue to tune in. Tomorrow night, we're going to be talking about investments and how do you get into that area and how do you build wealth there. So stay tuned. Join us again tomorrow. And please keep building wealth.
We are proud to bring together university resources, Tier 1 level research, and residents as expert collaborators from West Louisville neighborhoods. Why West Louisville? The greatest of all time comes from West Louisville.
Cassius Clay from Louisville, Kentucky. I am the greatest.
Knowledge, resources, and love abound. It's access that we all need. Louisville Change Lab is your connector.
Hello, my name is Ivory Rollins Cross, and it is my pleasure to serve as the director of the Louisville Change Lab.
The Wealth Builder movement isn't about money, it's about peace of mind, hope for the future, and fulfilling your God-given purpose. You are a wealth builder. You're looking to launch a new business, invest in your community, make systemic change, and actionable plans. You are a wealth builder, but you can't do it alone. Join Wealth Builder Movement, an online collective advancing Black and Brown wealth together. By joining our Facebook group and YouTube channel, you will learn from, invest with, and leverage others. Wealth is a group activity. Work, create, and build with others. Join the movement, the Wealth Builder Movement.